What will make a pro violin? Well, I remember somebody said to me, and I'm going to steal from somebody else here. I played this violin, and they're like, wow, that thing sounds really good. Really? I don't hear nothing. So what you're saying, I played well. I don't really play that well. That's the funny part. But it did sound good. And I have played this on stage, played that one on stage. I haven't played these two on stage. I can't wait to do this one on stage because I get to tell you about the haunted violin. Anyway, so the 1713 Stradivari. If you don't know the history of the 1713 Stradivari, which ups the price of that violin just because of that. Right? It's a very cool story. Anyway, the thing is that when I heard a really good player play this live with the band and stuff like that, I was blown away by what this thing can actually do, like sound-wise. It really was impressive. And I'm like, okay, well, when I heard a really good player play this and really get the tone out of it and stuff like that, I'm like, that violin's worth way more than I paid for it if we're judging it on that. And I could say there was violins in the $2,000 range that didn't touch this one for tone. You know what I mean? Now, playability, this one's a little bit on the plump side. It's a little more space. Good for people with big hands. Somebody who have big hands like that. Where this one's, the Stradivari is really kind of nimble and tight. This is a little more let her hang out. You know what I mean? Breathable. You know, playability wise. Hey, Missy. Oh, my cat. She's ignoring me. My cat's ignoring me. I think she always ignores me. Yeah. She's like, why is that human blabbering on about stuff? Anyway, so the point I'm making is that once you get into that pro level, well, what does that mean? Well, usually means, again, cosmetic. But you can get a pro level violin that's as plain Jane as this, right? And pay $3,000, $4,000 for it. Well, why are you paying that $3,000, $4,000? Well, there's things you might not realize about the pro level violin. For example, the sound post. Everybody knows about the sound post. But what about the rib? You know, on a pro violin, the things you don't see is the luthier using a sonic machine. Basically, when they're building the top, they'll actually fine-tune the rib to the top of the violin rather than just throw something in there and kind of say, okay, well, it should sound generally pretty good. Where that rib, like the rib on the inside of a violin, okay, it goes and it kind of comes down like your tonsil and it comes back up. And it usually, you can see it, if you look through the sound hole, I can't see because of the way the light is, but you can sort of see the bulges close to the bridge. Now you move it this way, you move it that way, it will resonate on a different frequency better than others, right? So darker, brighter, whatever. But if you get the frequency just right, okay, where the top vibrates, say this violin in, say, B standard, okay, vibrates the loudest, or A standard, it vibrates the loudest. If you fine-tune that rib to maximize that, which they can do using science, right? And you should see testing violin tops. So you'll see they'll put like sand in there, and they'll just put different frequencies and see where the resonation kind of goes. And you'll see like sound patterns. It's very cool. And that's what you get in your professional violins that you don't get in the intermediate and stuff like that. So you're not going to see that. You know, like there's no way to say, okay, you have a violin that looks just as beautiful as this one, but it is $4,000 more. Well, maybe that's why. So you got to do your research of how are they making these things. And then all that difference that I just mentioned, how much difference does that make? Maybe that much. You know, you pay this much more, but you might only get that much more, right? Let me tell you about the French violin. Beautiful red French violin from late 1700s. I tried it out, and the G on it is still, to this day, probably the best sounding G ever. Brent was the shop owner, and you know, I hope he's doing well because I haven't seen him in a couple of years. But every time I'd walk in, oh, you, hey, come here, I got something to show you, you know, right? So there was, I forget what it was. It was like 3,900, something like that. No, sorry, it was like $25,000. What am I talking about? Yeah, so I guess that was the most expensive violin I ever touched. Followed by a 1700 Spark violin that was a gut string with a Mozart head on it instead of a scroll or a line head. It was a Mozart head on it. You can find the odd one here and there, but that one was really cool. But this French violin was really sounded killer, right? But $25,000. Why was it $25,000, right? Like, wow, it's from the 1700s and it's still playing and it sounds great. And it's from the 1700s and it's from a maker, a French maker. I can't remember the French maker's name. That was quite renowned for his time. Well, you're paying for that, right? But where do you categorize that? Well, we'll do one more. So we went violin-shaped objects, student, intermediate, pro. Now we're at maestro, whatever. These are the violins that are, probably going to be $15,000 and up. Probably maybe $8,000 to $15,000 is probably the starting range, and then on the high end, $1.5 million, whatever. Who knows, right? These are built by people that are, this is the top luthier in the world. This is, the woods from here. This is exotic, that exotic. It might still look just the same as this. It might look as plain Jane as this. It might be more fancier than this, right? And again, the price is going to be all over the map for all kinds of reasons. If I tell somebody, they say, Reg, what'd you pay for that? Well, $550. What do you got into it? About $950. Okay. Okay. How much you sell it to me for? I'll give you $80 for it. I say, shit. I really need to go get some jubes and a can of pop, and I need to buy a teddy bear because my teddy bear wore out. Okay, $80 it is, right? Or I say, make those shoes of yours beat pavement, right? Maybe I do that. Or maybe the guy says, I'll give you $950 for it. You mean $9,500? Why? Why would you charge that? I like it. You know what I mean? Like, it's literally, like, that is literally what you're going to be dealing with when you get to a certain price, right? So Mastro is all over the place. And it's usually going to be made by a really reputable luthier. Every bells and whistles, refinement, handmade, blah, blah, blah. Maybe the thing is 100% handmade tools. Nothing, the wood's 400 years old. Natural dried wood from 400 years ago. There's all kinds of things like that they could say, well, this is why I'm charging what I'm charging for. It took 6 months to build, blah, blah, blah. Every refinement, and that's what you're paying for. And this guy's name to it. Okay, now it brings me to the last category. And I kind of already hinted at it with this. Why is this worth what it's worth? Because I said so. Mozart violin is worth probably $2 million, $3 million, right? Paganini's violin is probably worth 16, 18 million bucks, whatever, $5 million. The most expensive violin in the world, I think, went for something like 42 million or 60 million, whatever it was. It was crazy, right? Why? Because it was rare. It was an antique. It was still playable. The Stradivarius that you see playing at Carnegie Hall and stuff like that, they're not all original. They got a new fingerboard on them, new tuners, new tailpiece, all that. What you don't realize is they don't judge this stuff. What they judge is the body, the neck, and maybe the fingerboard. That's where all the pricing and that stuff is. All this other stuff is not worth anything. Doesn't matter if you paid $10,000 for the tuners. They're not worth anything. That's not what they're pricing. They're pricing it because it's a Stradivari from the late 1600s, right? So that's and it's still playing. That's what they're doing. Who's going to buy that? Well, museums, collectors, the odd performance with it. A lot of these music conservatories, whatever they are. they'll rent these to like say somebody like Hilary Hahn for a performance, right? She's playing on box, whatever. I'm sure she has her own violins, but what I'm getting at is that, those things, they're not meant for the common person. That's like fine art. They're in that category of fine art. And that price is all over the place. That price is all over the place. There's no uniformity to why the price is what it is. So hopefully what I've talked about here kind of gives you an idea that you don't have to break the bank to get a decent violin. As long as it plays well, it stays in tune really well and intonates well, and you play it well. Some violins might be great, but you don't play them well. The spacing, you just can't, you got smaller hands, bigger hands, whatever it is. I tend to adapt to instruments between ukulele size scale to bass scale, right? And extended range guitars, 8-string guitars that are, fingerboards that, that thick, that wide. Mandolins, you're all cramped up. So that doesn't bug me as much. I'm not one of those people that, okay, if I had this violin and I've been playing it for 3 months and 4 months, 5 months, 3 years, 4 years, and then you hand me this violin, I can't play it at all. It might take me, a half an hour or so to adjust to that, just because my mind's already there of, okay, correct your muscle memory because I'm always playing so many different necks. I see the same thing with guitars, where a guitar player has been playing the same guitar for 15 years, and you hand him your guitar, with a slightly different scale from 24 3/4 to 25 1/2, and he can't play it. He's like missing the frets. He's